Welcome to the Love is Our Nature podcast. We're back for part two of this
Yay.
special feature with the one and only
Mm,
Ellanah Fawcett. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. How did you feel being interviewed yesterday? Well, that was yesterday. That was 2 days ago.
It was nice. It was actually once we flowed into it, I was like, just
Mm-hmm.
sharing and speaking, and time is passing, and things are coming through. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was beautiful as well to kind of receive a deeper insight, like a participatory
Mm.
insight into your world and what lights you up, and
Mm.
one of your creative passions, too. So
Oh, thank you.
thank you for having me.
Of course. Welcome back. The intention of this episode is just to share about what we have both learned along our journeys in the realm of relationships and love and romance. Simply because it's such a rich topic, I feel. What do you
Hmm.
think?
No, I agree. And I feel like it's something all of us, like every single human from a young age, is kind of like intrigued by that aspect of life, by
Mm-hmm.
romance, by connection, by love.
Yeah.
We all have our own journeys within that realm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And, little did I know that the probably the greatest part of what I set off to when I at the at the beginning of 2021 went off to this deeper inner healing process. Little did I know it, like that a lot of it actually had to do with love and relationships and the I don't even know what to call it, like the skewed radar that I had, or the maybe uncalibrated compass that I had in guiding myself in love and relationships and uh and yeah, it was quite a journey, quite a process, all of 2021, particularly those first few months, just mostly alone, spending time with myself, which was a new thing for me. And I'm actually inspired to share with you and here with everyone as well. One of the things that came through for me in the ayahuasca ceremony I was in December of 2020, that was one of the catalysts for this deeper dive into inner healing. Would you mind if I share with you?
Definitely.
I actually have my notes here. I'm gonna pull them up every now and then, and when I'm in a plant medicine journey, I'll have a clipboard there because sometimes stuff just starts coming through. And a very interesting thing happened at one point here where I was making some notes, and then I feel even funny saying this, but at one point it was like something started communicating through my hand, like
Mm,
meaning like through the writing, like my hand was just moving the pen on the paper.
you're channeling.
Yeah, I guess so. That's what it's called. and and all of a sudden I was having a conversation with one or two spirits, perhaps, um, on my clipboard, on my notepad. So I'll start at first as just me, and then I'll kind of just jump back and forth a bit because these are my raw notes, So it's not. I don't know how much sense it would make if you just were to read it straight, but I'm gonna just pick up right from there. I mean, right from where it makes sense. Dance teaches focus, especially mindful dance, the dance with source and source energy. You also get to flirt with it and keep the human ego satisfied. For Caesar, parentheses, he has a lot of energy and he needs an outlet. Dance is the outlet. And then this is when something kind of starts speaking to me. Caesar, listen. When you dance, flirt with spirit. Flirt with me. And then here I put Caesar colon because I'm like, I need to capture that this was me saying the next part. Um, Caesar colon, who is me? She said, flirt with me. Then she says, I put she colon, I don't have a face. You've tried to find me in other women, and that is where you are foolish. You won't find me in other women. You will only find me here, within you. And Caesar says, but I miss you when I'm out there alone. She says, that's only because you haven't learned to slow down and realize that I am with you always. There is no alone. And Caesar says, wow, so I just severed my connection with you? She says, yes. Then Caesar, who are you? She says, hello, you can't ask that, silly. I am mysterious by nature, so you will never know me. All you need to know is that I am with you always. And then she goes on to say, divine male moves with assertion. Keep me not wanting you to is the dance. By the way, please ask anything, but don't ask for no dance. I dance by nature. I say I don't want you to by nature. I want you all for me by nature. Yes, I know I shouldn't want you like this, but I am a female. I am the divine feminine. And that, as that was being said, now this is me talking, I was thinking of past relationships where I experienced my former partners like always wanting more from me, like more time from me, more calls from me, more texts from me. When she says, I say I don't want you to by nature, it's like things like I wanted to go spend time with other friends, sometimes female friends, and I think jealousy would arise and things like that. And then she says that that's part of this dance. And I remember in this moment, as that came through, I was so moved because that was a pretty rich experience. I'm just giving you the words that came through, but it was quite an experiential thing that was going on. It's like I could feel her as I was writing for her, and almost feel like almost like see her emotions, and sometimes my face even made like her emotions as I was writing. So then I say, thank you for showing me your pain, Divine Feminine. I want you to know I welcome these moments, the opportunity to be with you, to hold you, to remind you that everything is going to be okay because I'm here. So I pause here because I'm skipping ahead. There was some other notes. And then I was thinking of how I relate to other women, and other people have even told me that I'm quite flirty at times. So then someone here says, yes, flirt, but never cross the line. And she says, you only cross that line with me, not even with her, parenthesis, your partner. You can't possibly expect her to be like me, the divine feminine. It's okay to want her to, because you're human. Just understand she won't. Honor her, praise her, for she lifts you. I will even show up for you through her. But I am not her, and she is not me. And you will always want me. Listen, that doesn't mean leave her. Your place is with her. We go back to this dance. That is the dance of divine masculine with divine feminine. She will want you all for her. She will flourish with you. Please, Caesar, stop expecting her to get it all together by herself without you. Your place is with her. That's nature. She shouldn't be by herself. The divine feminine understands. She says, I know I can't have you all for myself, but I want you all for myself, and I can't help it. That's nature. she goes on to say, stop expecting the divine masculine not to have a journey, for he is human in this life, and yes, he has a journey, meaning things to learn. I think I was speaking to like how hard I was on myself too for maybe not honoring the women that I'd been with when we were partners, you know, and being tempted with the thought of like, oh, the grass is greener on the other side, and maybe not navigating that in the best way. So that was, I guess, like a nice thing for her to say, which, when she said, stop expecting the divine masculine not to have a journey, for he is human in this life. And yes, he has a journey. Then goes on to say, Pachamama allows you to flirt with her with your every step. Honor her. And then it hit me in that moment too, like, wow, we live on this beautiful planet, and maybe she's like this huge female that loves us, that provides everything that we could possibly need: air to breathe, water to drink, food to eat, and doesn't really ask for anything in return.
I was
So
gonna jump in there though.
yeah, go ahead.
There's something as you were saying that though, like how she doesn't ask for anything in return, yet when we give her that flirtation, when we give her that presence and that honoring, she flourishes even more. So we build an even more like bountiful and fulfilling relationship with her. Like she can survive without us, but there's like this flourishing that happens when we come into like true loving relationship with her.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
very beautiful.
Yeah, and definitely as a collective, I think we definitely need to take care of her too, right? But it's not like she's asking us to. It's not like, oh,
No.
I'll give you these apples if you take care of me. It just gives us those apples because it's its nature, right? And perhaps we're a bit disconnected from our nature, which our nature would automatically have us honor her and take care of her. So then someone here goes on to say, your ego wants to say, but, I want more than just her. Caesar, it's okay for the ego to say that. Tame it. That is part of your job. You and me now allowed it to have its way and roam free. And look at where it's got you. And that, just for, I guess, more context, look at where it's got you, meaning like with a lot of pain and heartbreak, you know. And then,
Can I ask a context question
sure, yeah,
as well? Were
of
you
course.
still in your previous relationship during this
No,
journey, or that it finished?
no, I had finished. I'd been single now for a year,
Okay.
maybe a year and a half, maybe two. So it goes on to say, one woman will be your nurse. Honor that. Honor her. There's something to this word nurse that I think we could dive into a bit more in a moment. Honor that. Honor her. She has her own journey. And I will never understand. I think it's interesting how she goes on to speak as the woman and then maybe the spirit, you know, in a way. She has her own journey, and I will never understand. Honor her, thank her. The dance is part of your human nature, and both of you need to learn to be okay with it. Be okay with the dance between divine feminine and divine masculine. Give her her place as your queen. I think I paused there for a moment. I was quite moved. And then after reflecting, I think this is kind of like my ego speaking, maybe from a place of its frustrations again. On my notes, I want to say, female, woman, you can't expect your man to satisfy your every want, for not doing so is his nature. Honor him when he does. The divine feminine has to learn to choose her heartbreak. She aches. That is her nature. And that is why she needs you. Her nature requires having you by her side. I think that was actually not me. Then this is me. Caesar says, I'm afraid to end the mystery. And then another spirit says, it says, them, colon. The one pursuing the mystery is the wounded child seeking compensation. Only you alone can give him that love and nurture. Go do your solo dance. That's what she admires in you. The mystery will never end. It is the juice that keeps the human ego alive. And then I go on to say, here's what you don't understand, woman, and maybe you never will. Either way, here's what I would like you to understand, that I am here for you now, and I will never leave you. Yes, I will go sometimes, and flirt with her and with others, her meaning the divine feminine spirit at this point. But I will never cross that line with her or with anyone, that line that I only cross with you, that line, the line, which when I cross it, you get to be my nurse and nurture me. You might not understand that, and you probably never will, but that's part of the dance. Dance with the agony, dance with the pain, dance with the jealousy, for that is what you came here for, to dance. Just don't expect me to make it all go away. That's where that ends. Then I go on to honor my mother and write her a love letter, apparently, which I've actually shared with her in a beautiful setting at this point. More about that in the future. And I think that nurse concept is, when it comes to think of like a medicine woman, right? And then healing and like maybe all the work there is to do between a man and a woman to like support each other and healing each other's hearts. I think there's sometimes a place of deep vulnerability that when true connection is happening, as men, we open up and maybe cry like a child, and the woman gets to be there for the man. And heal the men with her love in a way, And I guess there's a fine line there between like validation and approval, and on the other side, just the rawness of the authentic human journey. I don't know. What do you say about that?
What do I say about that? I'm still kind of in the...
Yeah, there's a lot there.
I was getting so lost in the beauty of that story. And I guess that's a dance. We're always dancing, is that kind of the humanness of our nature and the divinity. And...
Yeah, and I think that part of where I was saying from a place of ego there, like, oh, you don't understand, like, I will never leave it. I think it also, that was alluding to some other struggles that I had in relationships where maybe I was struggling to either show my partner or display it or communicate it that, or like somehow give her a sense of security that I actually, like, I'm not going anywhere, because I think that was one thing that seemed to be needed from the other side that was missing for them in my relationships.
Is that because, like, deep down that wasn't true for you, that you weren't sure if you weren't going anywhere? So they were just sensing a subconscious truth.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, at the end of the day, I just don't think I was ready back then to like fully commit, say, hey, here I am, I'm not going anywhere. I thought I did. I used to say I remember to a couple friends of mine, like when I was going through some difficulty in my last relationship, like, oh, she just won't understand that I'm not going anywhere, and I have, and for me, it's so difficult to deal with how easily she seems to just want to go whenever there's some sort of adversity in our relationship. And a friend of mine one time was like, "Is that true though? Like, you really aren't gonna go?"
Mm.
um, and then all of a sudden it hit me. Like, wow, I kind of called my own BS. I was like, I say that that I will never leave. They don't have to worry about me leaving. But sure enough, there's a caveat there, which is that if you try to leave me, like, then you're dead to me. All of a sudden, like, I take my heart away, my love away, and I would have a really hard time bringing it back. Because I guess whenever I experienced that from a partner, like, oh, she's trying to break up with me or she's ready to leave, that must have like been triggered for like some really old wound that I hadn't really taken care of, and it would be so painful for me. I was like, oh wow, look how easily she's ready to just like throw the whole thing away when I thought we were building this like super solid foundation to our love. And
How do you feel like Caesar now?
oh, you're
Who's
interviewing now.
integrated all these lessons and kind of has been on this
Hmm.
journey. What advice would you give to that younger Caesar in those moments now from this new perspective?
I would say go be alone for a while and be introspective and find out what it truly is that you're wanting from women,
Mm.
and find out how much of that is actually something that only you can give you. And then you might be ready for a real relationship. Because, yeah, I can see now quite clearly, looking back, that I wanted this perfection from women, from a partner, that was just an unwinnable game for women. And it needed to be all this perfection because it was never about a relationship or about them. It was more about me, like wanting to know that I'm worth something, wanting to feel that I'm worth something. So I hadn't dealt with all the sense of worthlessness that I had for myself. And I was trying to get another woman to prove to me that I'm worth something. And the moment that she treated me as anything less than the Prince Charming, I was like, oh wow, this must not be it. And I would leave. Because it was painful for me to see that reflection of worthlessness or low self-worth by the way she would treat me. Back then I would say something to myself like, oh, if she really loved me, she wouldn't treat me like this. When all she was doing was being human. Upset. Like all of us get at some point or another. I was actually interviewed in one of my friend's podcasts, Tanai. She has a podcast called Commitment Phobe. And I told that whole story of how I just gave no space for another person's humanity. That was a deep moment of reflection for me too. When I was in Landmark interviewing to be a program leader, it was a phone interview, and they asked me like, "Oh, how come you're not in a relationship?" And after so many questions that I had already answered in a setting where like you're really inspired to just be as authentic as you possibly can, I guess I was moved to say something that I had never said before, which was, I can see that when it comes to relationships, I've just never been someone who can give space to the other person's humanity, who's never had this space to give.
Were you able to give space to your own humanity?
No. I guess they go hand in hand.
Yeah. The inner mirrors the outer.
Yeah. 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 And I spent my life escaping the mirror, the reflection of worthlessness that was there. So, yeah, I mean, there's just I find that to be such a rich subject because I think as men we definitely lack guidance in our times. To there's no school subject. I mean, you might hear in what we've been sharing up until now, like there's a lot of deep stuff there, a lot of maybe more complex emotional stuff.
Well, it's interesting because kind of like jumping into a different topic in
That's
some
okay.
ways, but like something that's been a huge part of your own journey was doing your own rite of passage ceremony.
Yeah.
And it's like we used to have those way back in the day, which was that like nurturing from boy into man.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's an emotional process in and of itself, which I feel like does kind of address those themes you've been talking about. Like it's like suddenly like whether it's going off into the wilderness by one's young self for many days, or like doing a ceremony that's something that happens to the emotional body of a man. And I feel like as you've been speaking, like that's what I've kind of been feeling, is it's like this transition in some way from the boy to the man. And
yeah, and perhaps it starts with the mother wound, right? Because we're little, we come from the spirit world where all there is love, and then we come as this little spirit into a little baby body, being used to like just love, and then all of a sudden, boom, like there's flawed humans trying to raise you, and the projection that we have of like God, divinity, and infinite love that we put onto our parents. Obviously, they fall short of meeting that expectation, and then the first wound happens, and then we spend our life trying to get from women what we didn't get from our mom, and that became very apparent for me in this ceremony. After I wrote this love letter to my mom, I reflected, and if I go back to my notes here, it says, I had been holding my mother hostage this whole time with resentment for not giving me all the worth and validation that I wanted, when in fact that was my own ego and the task of my human journey to go heal. And then a spirit again spoke through me in my writing, as crazy as that sounds, and said, the rite of passage has been lost in your civilization. That is why your men are weak and leadership is lacking. You've forgotten how to honor your mothers, your divine feminine. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. And like you said, then I actually was inspired right there in that moment. I made a commitment to have a rite of passage ceremony for myself. And if I happen to feel strongly that it made a difference, the process leading up to it, and then the ceremony itself, because the process leading up to a rite of passage ceremony is probably even more important than the ceremony itself. So if I happen to feel that those things made a difference for me, then maybe I can help other men, other guys make that transition as well. Because sure enough, I've done a lot of work with people, coaching people in the past, and I've been there listening to people and the things that they've been through, a lot of it through my work in Landmark. And also I've been very social my whole life. I know a lot of people, and one of the things that's for some reason, for whatever reason, tugs at my heart is hearing stories from women of like the things they tolerate from men. and then I often hear from other men how much they had a hard time just like being that steadfast, unshakable rock of love that the woman needed, So yeah, it's definitely a work that I'm inspired to dive into, to do with other men. Just started the men's circle.
Yeah.
That was really awesome. But anyway, we're 30 minutes into the episode now, and I feel like maybe we went sidetracked, but in fact, I think, to be honest with you, I never shared that with you, but I think that right there, that night, December 19th of 2020, if I'm not mistaken, That's really where the first seed got planted, which it's sprouting is actually what gave way to what I'm able to have now here with you.
Beautiful. And you went on to do a period of celibacy after that as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, oh wow, you really want to go there?
Well, I think
Yeah,
that's like a super
yeah. It
important
is really, really
chapter
important.
in transformation. And
Yeah, yeah. I would say listen to episode 4 of the Love is a Nature podcast. So you can hear all about that. But in a nutshell, yeah, I left Landmark after seeing that there was a huge blind spot of pain that I hadn't seen with those tools, and went to spend just time on my own. And after about a month, just under a month in Costa Rica, through guidance of the universe, pretty much magic, I would say, I wound up in this breathwork ceremony. Well, this breathwork, what do you call it? I don't know if they call it a ceremony. Workshop, let's say. And yeah, it was just me and 3 other people and the facilitator, and I had a huge process in that hour and a half, where I saw, like, not just saw, but also felt all the pain, like where it was coming from and what planted it there. And yeah, I saw how much I was trying to use sex as a desperate cry for connection, and failing at it every time. And I was like, wow, I've disconnected from a sense of divinity in my body. I touched my body at one point in that breathwork journey, and it felt like the most beautiful thing I'd ever touched. And it's like, I was like, it's like my body's divine. And then my next thought was, I haven't related to my body that way ever, probably. And when I've connected with other women sexually, sure, I've tried to honor who they are, but at best what I've done is just respect them. I don't think I've seen the divinity in them and really honored the divinity in them. And my ego fought this for a few moments right there, but I guess the inspiration in my heart was stronger, and I felt that what would be appropriate would be I felt inspired to create within myself the space to be able to connect with another woman in that way, which would first require for me to connect with the sense of divinity in my own body and in myself. So I said to myself, yeah, I'll be celibate. I'm not going to put a timeline on it, because knowing me, if I say I'm going to be celibate for 6 months, I'm just going to be waiting. I'm like, all right, it's 5 more months till I can have sex again. So I was like, no, I'm just going to be celibate indefinitely until I get to have that, until I get to create that deep connection with a partner in which we get to see each other's divinity and honor it. And again, my ego was like, wow, like here I am in Costa Rica and these beach towns with all these beautiful women, like that was such a bad idea. But as time went on, the more it felt like that was actually a great idea. And 6 months later, I was meditating, and my experience of myself was like night and day. There used to be this incessant voice in my brain whenever I was around women, like that would just try to plot how I would get to sleep with one of them, and putting condoms everywhere, my briefcase, my car, my wallet, and yeah, I even spoke to a friend about that. Like, wow, am I? Do you think I'm leaving women with the sense that, like, I'm treating them like a piece of meat? And she just looked at me. She didn't even answer, which felt like a yes. So I was like, wow, I never wanted to be that person, that guy. So anyway, all that just simmered down completely, disappeared. And I just felt like at peace within myself. I saw other women as humans, as beautiful beings. and then I declared my celibacy complete. I was like, okay, I'm done. But sure enough, even though I kind of removed the lid to my sexual energy, you could say, um, and there being no shortage of opportunities to to have beautiful sexual connections with amazing women in Costa Rica, I didn't. I just wasn't inspired to. That was so instilled in me at that point of creating the space for the type of partnership I had envisioned. In fact, I was inspired by that idea of, wow, what if I just only put energy, attention, and focus and time even into creating that which I really want. Because I think as men, sometimes, maybe women too, sometimes we like to mess around with the idea, okay, well, I know that I want like a beautiful partner, like committed, beautiful partner, but while that person's not here, I could mess around a little bit, you know?
Did you
So
know what you wanted at that point?
at that point, yeah. Yeah. Let me see, we're talking July. I know there was one person that you know, a beautiful friend of ours, that I got to connect and explore things with. And actually, that was when I was still celibate. So we kept it that way. And after we were done, which was like a 3-week period, I had to really sit with, okay, why is this not it? And then I walked out of that really knowing what I really do want. And yeah, then I just didn't look sideways to anything other than that. I felt like when the time was, when that arrived, I would know. And my brain would sometimes try to figure things. What my brain does, it just tries to figure things out all the time. So I would try to figure out, like, okay, well, maybe it's that person over there. Maybe I need to try and make something happen. Maybe I should ask that person out on a date. Maybe I need to rekindle things with my ex, or maybe my other ex. Maybe she was the one this whole time, and I just wasn't ready. Maybe now I'm ready, you know. and thankfully, I learned to catch myself, to catch my brain in that figuring out mode, and this thought felt inspiring for me. That at some point it arrived, which said, when I won't need to figure anything out, because when it comes, it'll be inevitable. And I'll know. So if it's me trying, then that's me trying. That's not it. So it was kind of like this surrender and this letting go. And I was like, okay, the universe is just gonna, I don't know, put it in front of me, and it'll be inevitable. Yeah, I laugh because I think back to our first connection, which I guess we'll talk about what happened. You know, not just the all the deep shadow work. But yeah, anyway, that's plenty about me. It's not about you. You're so naughty. As you always say, having me just tell everything. Well, no, that's fine. Thank you for asking those questions. That was something that I actually been meaning to share. And yeah, it was beautiful to kind of bring back that journey and reminisce on it a little bit. It was a beautiful time. So, what would you say was some of your process leading up to being ready for love, truly?
Well, I think underneath it all, it's like a similar theme, which is what you spoke about, is learning more self-love. And that takes a different path for each human. And yeah, it's been a big journey, me, with love. I look back to my early 20s, I related in such a different way. Like,
What
I
way was that?
I would just lose myself in love. Like I would fall in love very easily. Um, and at the time, like we kind of spoke about in the last episode, how a lot of my journey is being kind of moving from more that like tendency towards transcendence and
Mm-hmm.
being to kind of finding this body and this human experience. And I can see that mirrored in my experience with love. And kind of, I guess, like a little bit almost in some ways opposite to you. Like I would be with these men who I was completely in love with and not being fully chosen by.
Mm.
And I would see their humanness, but I would see it as so divine. And they were just these divine beings. And I had no idea how to communicate when I didn't feel like I was not treated well or not honored in some way. And so I would stay. It was almost like I was looking for them to show me my worth through choosing me. And I would stay and stay and stay and stay and stay and stay, or like hang on and hang on and hang on until at some point there'd be a breaking point. And yeah, if I look back, it's like writing poetry about wanting to merge in the ocean of someone else's soul and like all these things, but I didn't really know who I was.
Mm.
So I also, how can I speak to my own needs and my own self and create boundaries and co-create if I didn't have any structure, any solidity within myself?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it can also see parallels to my childhood and my own parents. Is like, yeah, just choosing all the time and falling very deeply for these men who didn't choose me because they were also devoting themselves to something else in their life. And I think we actually spoke about this in our own conversation the other day, and you referenced yourself how it's like beautiful how you actually have both. And I don't think
Both what?
like the ability to be really devoted to your path, yet also devoted to a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really know or had seen that as possible when I was younger. So my heart was kind of torn to pieces over and over again in my younger years. And then I finally had a relationship with a man who was choosing me, but that was too overwhelming for me to have someone actually like, hey, I want you,
Mm-hmm.
and like actually like could see you as my wife and having children with you and like creating a life together. And so I ran. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, whoa, like, but there's no pain, there's no like longing,
Oh,
there's
wow.
no like distance and trauma and all these things. This is too much. No, I'm done.
Nice.
And at the end of that relationship, I actually decided to go on a journey of conscious celibacy as well.
Hold on, but what? what was it though? That would come up? Like if you look at that mirror, that would have you say like, "Whoa, this is too much. There's someone choosing me."
Well, within myself, I wasn't actually sure if I wanted to fully choose him.
Ah.
So there was also some of my own. And I wonder if I look back then, maybe I was choosing men who weren't fully choosing me in many ways, because maybe on some level I wasn't ready to choose a man.
So you were choosing men that you weren't really gonna fully choose.
I don't know. If you would have asked me, I'd chose him in my full heart. Like I remember after one ending with this man who was like, he's been probably one of the most pivotal men in my love life of when I was younger. And I remember grieving him, just like my friend Daisy, who was doing like her cacao dance training. And I remember just being on the floor, lying on my belly, like howling in tears in this cacao ceremony, and like seeing all these past lives and and feeling, yeah. But for some reason I kept choosing men, and after him 2 other men came that was like a different story, but same thing, incredibly intense, deep connection, but then not being fully chosen.
Yeah.
But I also didn't have any communication skills back then. Like I said, I didn't know how to communicate when things came up, to set a boundary of how to be treated, but I also didn't know how to fully communicate my own love.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, I think especially after that relationship I just mentioned, that really broke me on a very deep level in my heart, that then was also like a little bit of fear of like not wanting to share the extent of my love for someone in case they didn't want that, in case that would be a burden on them. So maybe it's not, maybe I'm being hard on myself in some ways. I think the last one I was talking about where I was being chosen, a lot of it was also because I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of quite intense to have
Mm-hmm.
someone really choose me and me
Mm-hmm.
not be sure, and my intuition was telling me no.
Yeah.
And I do believe that that's something very big that we all have, and that was part of why I then chose to go into celibacy. Was I was like, okay, I haven't been listening to the intuition of my womb, and I need to start to listen to her of what is a yes, what is a no, as well as begin to honor her. And I'd had the most beautiful sexual relationships with these men, but then the safety hadn't been there outside of it. So I felt very honored in sexual union, but not in the rest of things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about trying to find then the voice and the boundary of my own womb, my own yoni, of like, okay, like, yes, you're being honored, your beautiful body's being honored in this moment, but is the honoring there outside of this?
Mm-hmm.
And is the safety there outside of this? And if I really tune into the deepest part of my womb, what is she saying? Like, does she feel safe? Does she feel held? Does she feel truly honored?
And did she?
Well, since then, now I've been much better at saying yes, no, about making sure that that's there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I explored with a few lovers then later in that time, but I think I had something, it was like, it's a long time. I can't remember how long I did without like exploring penetrative sex with someone.
Mm-hmm.
It was over 2 years. And I knew then the next time it was with someone where a relationship had been defined. So I felt safe in that way. But it was also beautiful in that time to explore how you can share love. Like I fell in love in that time of celibacy with someone, and I think we only kissed.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a very deep respect and like a speaking, and so you could call that more like maybe not love. There's so many different expressions of love, but like
Mm-hmm.
connection, infatuation, but seeing the divinity in another. And yeah, so exploring how connection can be built and explored without sex as a foundation for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that sex is like this incredible way we get to express our love and explore and deepen and honor one another and flourish the relationship even more, but really learning in that time what it, like, the other aspects, like how to build connection outside of that,
Mm-hmm.
and what's important outside of that,
Mm-hmm.
and to create a foundation that's really actually very safe and loving. And
What did you
yeah.
learn is important outside of that?
Many things. Yeah,
Such
it's
as?
like just connecting in the day to day,
Mm-hmm.
and like really. So if I also look back, like I was always very interested in the men's lives who I was connecting with. So that was always kind of there for me, but maybe I hadn't always felt them as interested in what lit up for me, because maybe I hadn't been. Like I would just kind of let all my stuff go and be like, wow, you're really into this spiritual practice. Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, teach me. Or like, oh, you
Yeah.
do this. Amazing. Teach me. And so to begin to find how to share myself, actually,
Mm-hmm.
which involves a journey of knowing oneself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was very big. And yeah, I think without that charge necessarily being there in the same way. It became easier to communicate about things like, hey, like, this is a need of mine. What needs do you have? Like, who are you?
Yeah.
So I guess more just like the day to day and the connection of heart. Like, the heart energy is so strong. Like, if we build our heart field, it's amazing. Like, you feel someone walk into a room when they built their heart field, and it's like, whoa. So just learning to connect more and more through the heart.
Yeah.
And I think a little bit of what you shared too, like, I'd always been very good at being solo and independent. Actually, I was like traveling the world by myself from a young age and exploring all these different things. But just to sink even deeper into that self-love, and into the embodied self-love, which I see as like the divine feminine, which I had a really powerful experience around. It's like a pinnacle point in my life in Thailand, where I was like going through heartbreak at the time. And I had decided in some of my time off, I was like, right, I've been being a terrible yogi. I haven't been practicing at all. Like, I've just lost all my practice. All I'm doing is wallowing and like just, I've lost myself. So I'm going to book a flight to India and I'm going to go sit in an ashram and just like meditate for like 2 weeks, just like be in an ashram, meditate, go back to like ascetic lifestyle. And anyway, I had this like funny feeling when I booked the flight. I was like, no, but I booked it anyway. I was like, no, like, you need to do this. This is your path. You've not been honoring it. And when the day came to go, I put the wrong backpack on my back. So I didn't even put the right backpack on. And there was a scorpion on it and it stung me on the back of my heart. And so I missed the ferry to my plane. So I missed my flight to India. And I stayed a little bit longer while I let things transform in my life. And they did. I actually fell in love with one of my best friends at that time. We had a beautiful romance. But what I got guided was like, that's no longer the path for you. This like coldness, this like strictness and rigidity. Like, okay, you're going to take your time off between like retreat seasons and go to Bali and actually learn a little bit more about like how soft practice can be through bhakti, through devotion, through like witnessing the culture that's there, which is the place I'd already been many times. And I love it there so much because it's like you look around everywhere and everyone's just giving like their daily practice is to give offerings to the little temples at home. They even give them to dangerous street corners on the road that are not part of their own little home unit, but it's part of the collective whole. Like, if we give offerings to the street corner, there'll be less crashes, so everyone benefits. But it's softer than sitting in a cold ashram, which I do love too. And they're not all like that, but it was just like this shift in mentality from rigidity, asceticism, like it's kind of like this more like rigid path to the softness of being here on this earth and worshipping the earth and living a little more sensually through the body and exploring devotion and like how devotion, daily devotion can be a practice that we can explore. I suddenly realized I don't know how we got here.
Well,
but I can't imagine how we ended up here.
No, it's great that I hear about your story. You were sharing about things that, in essence, had you be ready for love, and you were just sharing about the things that helped you cultivate who you are and helped you cultivate self-love at a deeper level.
So that was a big part of it, was moving from self-deprecation and whipping to self-love and softness and acceptance.
Yeah, that is something I love about you, is your softness.
Aww.
It's beautiful. I'm glad you sat in those ashrams when you did. But no more ashrams for you. Just a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I actually took you to the ashram in South Florida.
And I loved it.
Yeah. Good food there.
And beautiful roses.
Yeah. So then what happened? Then we met.
We met over dirty dishes.
Yeah. Yeah. You were in a relationship with a friend of mine, that someone who'd become
Mm.
my friend. Um, my housemate, in fact, one of them, not Darren. uh, and yeah, that therefore for me, like, you were just asexual. You were
Mm.
just a beautiful, lovely, soft, tender, angelic woman. And I just had deep honor and respect for you, because I really saw the way you carried yourself, and you'd been to song circles, and song circle was a beautiful journey for me. You can hear episode 9 with Rasmus, right?
Yeah.
Hear all about song circles, and yeah, I could really feel your depth in the song circles, and I had seen you at some other community events. I think you'd seen me too, and then one day after song circle, we had potluck there, and I was doing the dishes, and you came with either, I guess you came with some dirty dishes in your hand over to me, and said hello. Funny enough, I got to move into that house with Darren, and your ex, because you actually chose not to move in, right? So I think that's one of the first things that we talked about. I was like, oh yeah,
Mm.
I'm really loving the house. uh,
I think
and
that was before then. We definitely spoke before then because I
no,
knew you.
it's funny how
Yeah.
we don't have this right.
We have different
Well, we
timelines.
might have spoken like quickly. I think this was the first time I remember where I like really got to really
Okay.
connect with
You're
you.
better at time than me, so I trust you.
Yeah, I mean, and first you said hello, and it was like this soft, beautiful hug. Um, and if I'm completely honest, I actually used to think of you of a bit like airy fairy, because I can be very judgmental at times. But after that very short interaction by the dishes, I was like, wow, she was like fully present here with me. Like, felt like a very solid presence,
Mm.
and I was just like inspired by just who you were. It's like, what a beautiful being. But again, asexual, right? So then fast forward, I guess, um, you break up with this person, this friend of ours,
Mm.
and even though at first I wasn't so sure, because you guys kind of had a slow transition out of your
Mm.
relationship, and then what happened? Well, I guess for that reason, I still just kind of stayed at bay, and it wasn't like I was sitting in line waiting for my turn either. I guess this is part of, this is also important, the fact that I initially felt that I wasn't a good match for you.
Mm.
You were so soft and tender, um, and pure is the word that would come to mind the most. And I saw myself as not those things. still still feeling like a lot of my arrogant ego being present, and I was just like, no, it's just like, in fact, the guy she was with just now, actually a great fit. He's got a very nice softness to him. um, so because I had so much respect for you, I didn't want to just like mess around either. So instead, this beautiful friendship started to quickly cultivate. Um, do you want to share anything upon up this point of the timeline?
I'm enjoying listening. You're doing really well.
Well, then I think from what you've told me, you said that maybe you started to feel some interest. Um,
Yeah, it was actually very interesting. It was when that previous relationship, which was actually my first relationship out of this journey of celibacy for me. So there was also a lot of learning in that relationship. But we cut cords, like we fully ended it. And with Caesar, I'd also kind of had the same. Like he was just a friend, like
Mm-hmm.
it's like friend. And then suddenly these cords got cut, and suddenly it was like, oh, hi.
Yeah.
Why do I suddenly feel really drawn to this man?
When did you start feeling that?
He's-
When we went down to Posada or
Yeah, I guess
before?
it was then. Yeah, because that
Okay.
was very soon up. And I actually had I was planning to go back to Guatemala then, and everything was lining up. And then suddenly everything, like the flight I was going to take disappeared. And like it suddenly was more complicated. I was like, okay, I'll go on this trip.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
It was in that
this
trip. It
is
was 9 of
interesting.
us, right? With Stefan, Maiwa, Darren. It was a group of 9 of us that went down south, and yeah, that's also when I started feeling like this magnetism. But even before that, I remember like as a friend, I also had a huge appreciation for you because the time started coming where Darren and I knew we needed to find a new place because the landlord was going to sell the house, and some friends had started to also move away. Some had already moved further south in Costa Rica, and it seemed like everybody was moving. And I remember we were having dinner with a group at one point before this 9-person trip. I remember thinking, and maybe I even playfully said something like, wherever we go, like wherever we move, like I hope Ellanah goes there too. Like we can't go without Ellanah. And we even playfully said, Darren and Pippa, like, oh yeah, it'll be 4 of us now. Ellanah will live there too.
I remember that. I was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, that'll be an amazing house.
Yeah, and I remember feeling like, yeah, wherever we go, I just, for some reason, it like feels important that like she's there too. So she needs to come wherever we move. So anyway, we're in this 9-person trip, and then little by little, people start going separate ways in the trip towards the end, and then it was kind of like 5 of us. Justice, Martin, and you and Pippa, right? And and we started getting together for meals. But yeah, anyway, I guess that's where we both felt some magnetism, though you were very good at not showing any of it.
My mom always says I'm really good at playing it cool,
Yeah, you're too good.
which I think is just naturally happens.
Yeah, which is okay.
Well, I also didn't think you were interested. That was like the theme then of the next period of time. It was
Yeah.
just like, I didn't really think.
Well, in that trip, I actually spoke to my friend Justice. I think you came up actually, and I was like, I don't know. I think she's too pure for me, and Justice actually pulled for you. He's like, no, she's got some sass in her. I was like, you think so? I don't know.
Now you know.
Now I know. Yeah. But anyway, there was a seed planted then, but still, like, I still wasn't sure. I was silly, I guess. But there was a couple things that moved for me that made a big difference. It was right around the time that Darren and I did Authentic Relating, weekend 1 and weekend 2, and in between those 2 weekends, I think we were driving back actually from weekend 1. I say something about like, oh yeah, no, I don't know. I think I'm too much of a dick or something like that. And Darren's like, dude, sometimes I hear you say those things about yourself, and I'm honestly like, who is that guy? Like, I haven't seen this arrogant dick guy that you describe yourself as. And I was like, really? Wow, maybe I'm not that. And my friend Tish one time, who's actually has a very popular podcast episode with me here. I was like, oh, you got to meet my friend Justice. He's like the most loving guy like you'll ever meet. And she's like, oh yeah, more than you? And I was like, oh no, I can be a dick. and then Tish didn't even say anything else. She was just like, okay. But then that was before the conversation with Darren. And then when Darren said that, it actually hit me like, wow, I actually couldn't even be with Tish's compliment in that moment. And then meditating like a day or two after that, it hit me. I was like, wow, you know what? I did all this like transformational work, all this personal development, to become like a greater version of myself, and actually haven't given myself credit for the fact that I've become the person that I was working the last 6-7 years towards becoming. I'm actually not an arrogant dick anymore. I'm not a jerk. Sure, my ego is still there and it'll still have tendencies, but it's under control now, and it's not who I am. And I redefined who I was. I even wrote in my journal and like really ingrained that in myself. I'm like, I'm gentle, I'm loving, I'm kind, I'm caring. And suddenly I felt like maybe I'm not such a bad fit for you. and talking to Stefan actually right after we recorded the podcast, I guess it's episode 18 or something. I was talking to him. He was like the last person I spoke to about this. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I guess there's a part of me that I tell him, I think I'm seeing a part of me that likes being treated maybe not so nicely at times. Because I like the woman to have, to be kind of feisty. And Stefan asked me this brilliant question. He's like, "What?" He said, "Why do you want like your partner in a committed relationship to give you attitude?" I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I'm twisted that way. But then it suddenly hit me. Like, this was like another one of those blind spots that I had done a lot of work around what we would call the genesis of identity, about what happened when I was 4 years old, that went on to define a lot of how I wound up being. And there was this when I was 4 years old, this girl threw away the paper heart I gave her, and in that moment, I can see that I really wanted her to want me, and that got ingrained in that moment. That's what I saw right there talking to Stefan, and immediately I understood how come I in the past kept like chasing so much women who actually didn't want me. I couldn't just get their no and be like, oh, okay. I was more like, oh no, like I will strive and redeem and turn it around. And now I understood, because even at 4 years old, what I most wanted in that moment, that very difficult emotional moment at 4, was that woman to want me. And she had demonstrated like giving me attitude, giving me rejection, so then in a twisted way, an aspect of my ego wanted a woman that kind of resembled that, And that night I remember being with myself and thinking, I can afford to let that part of me go now. That's not really an ingredient I need. Surely I enjoy like being with someone who's witty, which you actually really were. And so anyway, that was another important defining moment. And then you were in between homes, and you were staying with Pippa in her room, and one night I go down and ask you, Darren, and Pippa, like, oh, who wants to watch a movie? And both of them said no. You said yes. and we watched Samadhi, one of the probably most academic spiritual films. And somehow, somewhere in the middle of that movie, we started laughing so hard. And I saw this super playful, witty side of you, and it was almost like we laughed so hard. It must have been like at least 10 minutes. I was crying, my jaw hurt, my face hurt, my stomach hurt.
Poor Darren.
Yeah, Darren walked out of the room, said, what's going on? I don't even know what he said. Then he walked back in the room. We were still in the middle of a laughing attack.
Something I remember is like, it wasn't even just that time, like, you would send me into these laughing attacks in those days. I've never experienced in that way with anyone else.
That was beautiful.
It was like the car story, like all these things.
Yeah, you really got my humor and really seemed to appreciate it. And I guess I really enjoyed that. But when we were having this laughing attack, by the time we came out of it, I almost felt like we had, I don't know, gone into a portal, gotten really much closer, and then came out of it. And all of a sudden, like there was this abstract connection that got formed.
Well, I think that was also after the dance, no?
The dance.
Because we shared this.
This was after the dance.
Yeah,
Yes.
we shared this beautiful dance at one of the ecstatic dances that was. So after the trip had just been a bit confusing in many ways. Like, what is this? No,
Yeah.
no. And then
Maybe,
suddenly
maybe.
we were at ecstatic dance, and it was like towards the end, so the music starts to get
I
softer.
had gone to 3 contact dance classes at this point.
And then Caesar's just suddenly like appeared and kind of centered,
I approached you.
non-word. He approached me and invited me into a dance, and it turned into this like beautiful dance of deep presence and connection, and like something opened in that moment, I felt, at least.
Yeah, it was a beautiful moment of connection. In fact, our friend Alicia came up to me after the end of the ecstatic dance, and she was like, wow, like you and that beautiful woman you were dancing with, like I was watching you, and it was so beautiful. You made me cry. Thank you for touching my heart, she said. And I was like, wow, okay. I guess there was definitely something there. And surely I felt it, right? In contact dance, you're not meant to break the point of contact between the bodies. You just kind of feel to see where it wants to go. And the music stopped. We went into Darren's sound journey, and I never broke contact with you. I was wondering, I wonder if she thinks this is weird. I don't know. I hope not. Doesn't feel like she does. And I just held you from the back of your head through the dance journey, and yeah, that was before the laughing attack. Those were two pivotal moments. And then
it was also like, if I do remember, like this word confusion just came through before, and it was like an interesting time of like, and someone actually asked about this later on when we were in a relationship, about, wow, that's beautiful that you went from friends into this romance. And I remember after that dance, like almost like feeling this confusion in my being, like, whoa, like what was that? Like, we've been friends all these months, and then what was that? Where did that come from? And then also playing out one of my old patterns when we were in the circle and eventually breaking contact because of fearing like, oh, well, like this might be too much for him, and I don't want him to feel like burdened by like needing to hold me or like pretend anything. And then just kind of like going to bed that night, but also being confused and like, whoa, and being in the kitchen and then being like, was he going to kiss me? Because that was really beautiful. And then, wait, no, he didn't. It's just some people, they just dance like that sometimes, because we do, like in the contact world and stuff, like sometimes you do, it's like share these really powerful dances, and that's it. Then you leave it on the dance floor. Yeah. And you see it, and they can be very healing journeys too. And so there was like a confusion in that, like, was that just a dance, or is there something that is shifting from friendship into something else? And wonder what he thinks, but I don't really want to say anything.
Right. Yeah, no, nobody said anything. Shortly after that, interestingly though, I guess it was another synchronistic thing. I was supposed to, probably it was November 19th of last year, 2021, that I was supposed to go back to the US for a visa run, because it'd been my 3 months. But Pippa helped me get an appointment for residency, so now I could stay beyond that point. But I was really struggling with, do I go back and spend Thanksgiving with my family? Like, it's a very special time, which is the last Thursday of November. And something just kind of inspired me to like stay, and I said, okay, no, I'll just go back for Christmas. I'll stay longer. And the fact that the house was being sold too, I was like, I'll just got to make the best of the house for now. So I'll just stay. Our friend Alicia had a birthday celebration coming up too. So the weekend after I was supposed to leave, Darren had a trip to Posada to check it out, to see if we were going to work together. So I joined him. Oh wait, no, there was authentic relating
Yeah.
Yeah. It was authentic relating and Posada at the same time. So we went down for authentic relating and to check out Posada. So we were down there for like almost 10 days for the 2 weekends. And suddenly I start hearing that maybe you're coming with Annabelle. Because Darren and Annabelle were kind of exploring a connection. They'd been on a couple of dates. I hope that's okay to
Annabelle
say.
is she's my housemate.
Yeah, we love you, Annabelle.
A really dear friend of mine.
Yeah.
He's a super magic being.
So Annabelle wants to come hang out in Posada, and I guess she was telling you about it. When I briefly spoke to you, you had said like, "Oh yeah, it'd be nice to maybe go down there and spend some nature time."
Because the last trip had been so fun too.
Yeah.
And Darren had actually been inviting people to come back down again.
Yeah.
Like just like come down
Yeah, he's
whenever.
always
Like
inviting
come down,
everybody.
come down. I was like, wow, it would be nice to like
Yeah.
be by the river again.
Right. So when I thought that you were interested in coming down, I thought it was because you just wanted to be in nature again down there. And I remember thinking, man, I actually wish I would have taken her out on a date by now, like Darren has Annabelle, because then I would know. I know Annabelle's coming with a romantic intention, but I don't know why Ellanah is really coming.
And I wouldn't have come down if Annabelle hadn't really wanted to go down to explore down. I think if I'd known that Caesar would like me, then I would have been like, okay, yeah, we'll go down and like have this time. But I was kind of like, had felt this connection and was like, well, now it feels even more awkward because because there's like this connection, but
and then us two there, us third and fourth wheels.
Yeah.
So that was actually after the authentic relating weekend one. Then that's when I had that conversation with Darren, and then you were coming. So that's when I finally made up my mind. This very stubborn head of mine was just like, go for it. I'm going to go for it. I told Darren, you know what, Darren, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to give it a shot. So we make a beautiful dinner. You two arrive late on Wednesday, I think. And, well, I said we make dinner, but I think mostly I made the dinner. Darren's a very supportive, moral support sous chef.
He's the kitchen DJ.
Yeah,
he plays amazing cooking music.
Yeah, so we had a nice candle lit dinner, the four of us. It was already late. We all went to bed. And then the next day I was working down there at the retreat center. And throughout the day, I had started plotting this thing. So I make a playlist of beautiful contact dance songs that I thought were beautiful. And I said to myself, at one point, I'm going to ask her to go dance. So we're going to have a beautiful moment. And I'm going to go for it. So I told Darren, hey, Darren, if I disappear with Ellanah, don't go looking for us. So dinner comes. We eat. And then we're like, all right, let's go make a fire. The fire pit is by the Maloka that they hadn't used in a long time there. So I actually swept it during the day, too, because it was very dirty. I'd made my playlist. So I find you, and I'm like, hey, do you want to go get a head start? I'll show you the Maloka and the fire pit. You were like, sure. So I got my speaker, cue up the music, take the flashlight on my phone. And I was like, oh, look, there's the fire pit. You're like, oh, cute. I'm like, yeah, there's the Maloka. You want to go see the Maloka? You're like, yes.
I wonder what it would have happened if I said no.
No, it's not an option. And then we walk to the beautiful Maloka. And there's this little center altar there. I put my phone, I start playing the music on my phone, leave the flashlight face up because it was totally dark in there. Put the speaker down, and as soon as the music starts, I say, would you like to dance with me? And you looked at me and said, yes. Oh, thank you for dancing with me. This was a night of an eclipse too, right? I think later that night.
Yeah, it was super special.
Yeah. So, yeah, we start dancing, and then Darren, right into our first or second song, I see Darren walking up with Annabelle with a couple candles. And I didn't want them to kill the moment. So as soon as they were at earshot, I was like, welcome to the dance. And then they're like, oh, okay. and went and started dancing on the other end of the maloka. So we still got to keep our intimate space there, and yeah, then it was magical. It was magical. I was really feeling you in that moment. A few songs in, I remember like being cheek to cheek. We're not gonna go into full details, but anyway, here we're just dancing. But there was one moment where now we're like forehead to forehead, nose to nose, and I felt so attracted to you in that moment. I was like, do I kiss her? And in that moment, I caught myself again. Like, there I go, trying to figure it out. So I'm not gonna. In fact, this tension is nice. So I want to draw it out some more.
So naughty.
we keep dancing some more. We danced the whole playlist. It must have been like 15 songs. And towards the last few songs, we kind of worked our way down to the floor. We're sitting there, just kind of dancing with our hands, and until we're like laying on the maloka, and just our hands are dancing. Do you want to take over?
Well, I think we have different versions.
We don't have different versions. Yeah. So anyway, it got to that point where it was inevitable. You know, in a way, it was like the universe had promised me that when.
I didn't feel it was inevitable at that moment.
Well, it wasn't. This wasn't your deal with the universe. It was my deal with the universe.
Was like, he still hasn't kissed me?
At one point, we were laying next to each other. You just kind of propped yourself up in the elbow and rolled on top of me and just went for a kiss. Or at least maybe I went the last 10% or something, but you got there. Like, it was very apparent. I must have went some of the distance. But it was very clear. It's kiss time. And it was a magical kiss. Yeah, it was just so beautiful. And it's a beautiful moment because that was like a very well-marked, ingraining moment that transitioned us from friends, beautiful, sacred, platonic friendship to boom, like we're more than that now. And yeah, we kissed and we did a fire with Darren and Annabelle, and I held you most of that time, and then they left. I was excited for them to walk away so I could kiss you some more. And when it got late enough, I asked you if I could walk you to your cabin. So I walked you to your cabin and dropped you off at your door. And I walked my very innocent self back to my cabin. And I guess that was important for me because, yeah, there was just so much respect that I had for you and so much that I saw in you that I wanted to honor. So even though that old Caesar voice probably spoke a little bit like, oh, go on in. There was something much greater that was like, no, like treat this with all the sacredness that it deserves, because this is really something special and you're really someone special. So that was that. Anything else? What was it like to be walked home? Dropped off at the door.
It was very lovely.
Oh.
Yeah, I told my mum the story and she was like, oh, I really like him. Because you didn't try to come in. She was like, what a gentleman.
Yeah.
Yes, I really like him.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that was the big, I find it really special that was the night of the eclipse too. So it means we can always track our anniversaries not by a number but by the moon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which might not be as interesting for you, but for me as a woman, I'm like, oh, wow,
yeah,
been this many moons. But yeah, that was the beginning. It was something new and exciting, and I feel like for both of us, I mean, we both kind of shared our stories at the beginning of the podcast, but I feel like both of us were exploring very new experiences of self in terms of relationship. And I remember having discussions at the beginning of the relationship around like, well, what are your shadows in relationship? Like, what are your patterns? And I remember one of those conversations kind of saying like, well, these were my patterns. I actually don't know what my patterns would be
I was
anymore.
like, she's
I feel like
basically
there's
saying
new
she doesn't
ones.
have any shadows. I tell you all of, like a bunch of mine. Oh yeah, I have a tendency of this, and I could sabotage our relationship by doing that. And you didn't have much to share.
Well, I felt like I was about to experience very new layers of myself, like very new shadows, very old ones that just had been so deep that they hadn't had a chance to be explored yet, because there's all these other ones that need exploring that have been integrated. And I really did feel that going into relationship with you, of like, this is a completely new pattern. And what was really beautiful was the session with Christopher that Annabelle and Truman got me. Was he shared in it, this beautiful intuitive channeling counselor. He was like, wow, I'm not going to say much about the relationship because you trust in it, and that's the most important thing. But what I do feel is neither of you are dragging your feet. So from this history of a lot of the patterning being one person choosing and the other not fully choosing, it was this very powerful new experience of having both people choose and feeling you choosing and feeling me choosing and being like, wow, okay, this is something I've never really experienced before. And who am I when this happens? And so it's been a lot of exploring new layers and new facets of relating.
And we'll get to go much deeper into those layers in the following episode, where we explore like what it's now been like to be in a relationship and everything that's come up, because it actually has not been just rainbows and lollipops all the way through. I probably have been through
rainbows are made of rain and sun.
I think I dealt with definitely some of the most challenging things I've ever dealt with in a relationship inside of our container. And within myself, it's beautiful that we always had a lot of respect up until now. But yeah, a lot of confrontation for myself, things that came up, a lot of old shadows, and a lot of sitting with myself. So anyway, we'll get to dive
running.
dive deeper into all that. So thank you for tuning into this conversation. Thank you for sharing with us your time, and for letting us share with you our story. It's beautiful that we got to share our story, and
I hope that it brings whatever seeds you need, whether that's like inspiration or resonance or support in any way.
What a beautiful story to tell. Thank you for choosing me.
Thank you for choosing me.
I love you.
I love you too.
Okay, everyone, we'll see you in part 3. Bye-bye.
Bye.